that was one of the harder things is learning just to go through the motions, get your pitch down, learn to deliver naturally, right? You don't have to be a salesperson. I think one of the big misconceptions I had, and I see this in other people, is that selling is dirty or like selling is gross. Don't leave the best impression on it. And that's what we think of as sales. It's just being able to provide real value to people. Am I actually solving a problem? And then if the answer is yes, I can solve a real problem. CISOs and CEOs right now are seeing what's happening in the world technologically and say it's more than AI, but it's not. Every CEO is gung ho behind this AI wave, and because they understand the impact that it's going to have, and it is having already. But work is an exciting thing. I think we had the opportunity to solve some really big security problems in a completely new way.
Guest on Experience the Next Level podcast is Tyler Welton. Tyler has been a developer for many years, and recently he has pursued the path of entrepreneurship where he has founded Untamed Theory. Bob, what did you think of Tyler?
Yeah, I thought it was a great conversation, very engaging, and I thought it was particularly impressive when he told the story of him speaking in front of all those people at DEF CON and how he got to that position and then what happened after it. So it was a great conversation. Why don't we jump into it? Why don't you just start by talking about yourself and your background?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go way back, which I'll do, but then we can talk probably more career-wise type things. But no, the my early start in tech, I didn't look out to go into tech. So, I didn't start off going, I want to be a programmer. Although always writing code when I was a kid, right? So I think my early work was around, learning basics so I could hack my TI-83 calculator and put, cheats in it for school. Right? So that was like, stuff, and then learn Visual Basic and then try C++. This was when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Just for hijinks, right? Like nothing I was not driven career-wise, I would say, to do that. But I always was sort of technically minded and then loved to build and tinker and things like that. I think in the InfoSec space, which is like where I live, so for context, right, InfoSec is my thing. So especially now in application security, that's been my career path. But I didn't start out that way. So I didn't say I want to be a programmer, I want to do this for a living. The thought of that really didn't appeal to me very much, but which was silly looking back on it. Like hindsight, it's just like, oh, I'm really into this stuff. Maybe there's a career in it. Came to Nashville to do audio engineering, and I got a degree in that. I worked in a studio for 2 years in the music world. But the whole time I was sort of in college, I was participating in hacker.
Did you go to Belmont, by the way?
I did.
Yeah, oh, very good. Yeah.
You know of it.
I know of it. Yeah, as a matter of fact, my son-in-law went to Belmont, but he was one of the few people that was not into music, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's some amazing people have come out of that school, and
it was a great experience. I don't at all, regret that part of it. Went out and worked in the recording studio for 2 years. At the same time, I was working a tech job, like a security tech job, and I'll get into that in a minute. But man, it was a great time. I worked for this producer. He was a big name producer named Richard Landis. He's passed away, but he produced like the Vince Gills, Juice Newton, a bunch of country stuff. And I had a blast working for him. The hours were horrible. I was a newlywed, and the pay was awful. So when it started getting into, hey, maybe I could do penetration testing. Hey, all this like Wi-Fi hacking stuff you're doing in your spare time is my wife speaking to me, right?
Right.
Maybe that is a thing you could get paid for. And I was going, nah. These guys I hang out with on the, these meetups, I'm going to InfoSec meetups throughout college, just to hack and have fun, right? Not in a malicious way, but just to learn and break, I broke this Wi-Fi protocol here. And that was a lot of what I did in my college years. Um, turns out there's like a career there, and that's how that evolved.
Mm.
It
Was there any crossover between the audio engineering and then,
you know
the cybersecurity or information technology?
I believe there is. So,
Yeah.
like, I've always felt like it's the reason I was drawn to both is it's a good blend of like the analytical plus the creative. So it's
Mm.
that creative problem solving, on both sides, right? There's a technical aspect to it, but there's also this sort of let's find new ways of doing things.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to me, I looking back, that's hindsight, right? That was easy to say now, but to me, that's what the crossover was, right? There's some
Okay.
appeal there, figuring things out. If you can't get something done, how can we make it work? There's a lot of sort of maybe indirect applications that are crossovers, um,
Yeah.
crossovers there. But
Yeah,
no, I mean,
what made you decide then to like actually shift? Because you were, I granted
yeah.
it sounded like they had to be nice to you because they weren't paying you that very much.
Right. No, they
But
were good to me, right? In the studio, Richard was very, very good to me. And I don't regret my time there at all. It was a fantastic time. But it really came down to, hey, I think this thing has a trajectory that I didn't know
mm,
existed, right?
yeah.
The first job I got was still while I was working at the studio. I got this job at the university because they had known me from some on-campus jobs that I had done there, and I had, and this we're going early in my career. I was playing around with the network. I found some insecurities in the network at Belmont, and and was able to report that, right? And they kind of said, okay, oh, this is interesting. He has some interest in this security thing. So they ended up making up a position and they called it like security technician. And it was essentially a catch-all of just stuff that was security related that they didn't really want to do. And that was my first security job, right?
Mm.
It was this technician job that I doubt you could find a job like that on the planet because it was just made up. And it was part-time, right? And so that was like my foot in the door. But really, when I started kind of networking, talking to people that were in the industry and going, wow, okay, mind you, this was earlier 2000s, right? 2006 to 2010, that period of time. You didn't have big security. You might have had security programs in DC, right? Or in for bigger companies, but it hadn't hit yet. The wave hadn't hit where everyone wanted a security person on board. Usually security fell to like an IT administrator at smaller to medium-sized companies. And there was nothing wrong with that, but you just didn't have this like massive job pool. Like you,
Yeah, it was kind of an afterthought, wasn't it? Back
yeah,
then, right?
absolutely.
And they weren't, designing security into the networks, into applications, into software,
Yeah,
right from the beginning,
totally.
which they're trying to do now, but it still hasn't gotten there. But it's yeah, you're right. It was
Yeah.
kind of the Wild West back then.
It totally was. So from a learning perspective, it was great. But also from a job perspective, it was a little bit unknown. So to answer your question, like, how did I know when to switch? I didn't really. As you can tell from the
Yeah.
stories, it's like, it's kind of gray area on like where I was going with that. And then I was fortunate enough from that part-time job to really go, you know what would happen if I applied myself to some of these skills, start interviewing. And that's actually how I ended up working for that contractor in DC. And so that was my first big, I'll call it like my first big boy security job. And that
Uh-huh.
was, 15 plus years ago now. Oh man. But and that was like my first job where, hey, I got to do penetration testing. I got to do analysis, right? Real analysis on large data sets. And so that was sort of the path. I went from that sort of creative problem solving in the music space to this sort of, hey, I think I could do this part-time tech thing. And then it turns out all those years of learning how to hack protocols paid off it paid off literally, right? In a
Mhm.
job. And so that was my foot in the door. I wouldn't advise that path to most people, but, I can tell my story. So,
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, not every path is a straight line. You know what I
oh,
mean? And it could still, the thing is, you could still get to the same place.
oh, Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
so that, I mean, that's cool. So what are you doing now?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
was I told a lot of the beginning of the story.
yeah.
But from that point, right, I got into so I worked for that company for a little while. They exposed me to all sorts of really, really cool things that I'd never been exposed to before from a professional standpoint, right? Like um, all sorts of cool network things, how to build a SOC,
Hmm.
like Secure Operations Center.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. They then started a vertical for pen testing. So I got exposure very quickly through that job to a lot of different ideas. But from there, I went and transitioned and got started the 10-year path that led to where I am now, which is in the application security space. So started working for a startup called LeanKit. They were a small software company here in Nashville, and I worked for them for 6 years or so, and it was a great experience. Totally different. It was a startup life, right? Ping pong tables and beanbag chairs, and just it was a different experience, right? And but through that, I got exposure to some new technologies, and then from there, I can dive into the development of some exploit frameworks that I ended up doing. But I got exposure to some technologies in the CI/CD pipeline, which is how software is
Mhm.
developed. And I was able to develop and pioneer some attack styles against those systems. And then that led to a lot of work in the application space that I ended up doing. So, um, you know, got to speak at DEF CON. That was a huge kind of pivotal moment in my career story.
Cool.
And then from there, the work we did there led to a lot of different things that I'm working on now. After LeanKit, I ended up working for a company called Built Technologies, and Built is a financial technology company based out of Nashville. But through my experience with those startups, right, and watching those startups grow and change, and we can elaborate on some of that in a minute, but I really just felt like, hey, you know what? It's time to do this thing myself. Um, and that led to Untamed Theory. So
Mm.
over the last 10 years or so of working for those startups, had also been doing some contract work, contracted pen testing. And through that, kept the company name Untamed Theory, but have evolved that into building security software. There's a lot of pieces in that story that I haven't filled in, but
Sure.
that's where I am now. Untamed Theory is, we're building software to help companies stay secure with their code that they're writing.
Yeah, so that's quite a shift. So
Yeah, it's a very big.
to the entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Entrepreneur. So you have
Yep.
to kind of manage, of course, the actual business and doing the security work, but then you also have to sell the business and
Oh,
bring in new clients. And
oh man. And in
yeah,
some
so
ways, yeah, go for it.
yeah, so I could kind of see where you develop the technical skills, right? Through your
Sure.
journey going through, from audio visual to, or sorry, from audio analysis to, to basically being a security analyst, and then going
Right.
from company to company and to going through the startups, right? And then
Yep.
boom, now you
Oh,
still have you have the skills, and you have kind of a little bit of cachet, right, after your
right.
DEFCOM experience.
Yes.
Now you have to build a whole different set of skills to run the business. Talk about that, man.
Oh man,
Yeah.
it's 100%. It was like starting over, right? In some ways. And
Hmm.
you would think, I think you see this a lot in tech companies. You have this cool technology or a cool tech skill, and you think, well, I'm a tech practitioner. I would buy this, right? And you think that that is how the build it and they will come mentality, which just it's not real, right?
Yeah,
It's a
not
it's a total
real.
figment. You could
Yeah,
have the best product on the planet, and if you can't sell it, if you can't get it in front of people, you're going to fail.
yeah,
And the opposite is true too, or the inverse. If you have an okay product but you can sell, right, you'll do okay.
yes.
And it's a totally different skill set. And I think I love it, but I had to discover that I loved it, right?
Mm.
And I don't think that it's for everybody, right? Because you do have to get way out of your comfort zone to go, and you're not just leading a team, maybe technically, which I had done in the past, right? In the
Hmm.
security capacity, which is
Yeah.
called team leadership. you're now like steering people to an objective of growing a business, which is it's different. It's different. And it took a lot. It's taken years of very intentional work. And I don't think people talk about that a whole lot. But it takes very intentional work to kind of learn to sell, learn to how to position the value that you add in the world. But it's been fun. It's also been the most fun thing I've done. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So t tell me about that journey. You talked
yeah,
about being intentional. You talked about building kind of leadership skills, right? And also sales, I guess, and marketing skills, right? As
yeah,
well. So
right.
like that sounds like that is an interesting journey that probably had a couple of challenging situations, along the way. So,
Oh,
talk a little bit about
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Maybe this is just my experience, but I don't think it is that when it comes to selling, right? One, you have to just if you're a behind the keyboard kind of person, you got to get way out there, and you gotta put yourself in front of people, and that will mean failure, right? So where you can kind of hedge yourself against that failure in other positions and other jobs and other career paths, you can't. It's mostly failure, actually, right? And you're going for those successes. But you have to learn to, that was one of the harder things is learning just to go through the motions, get your pitch down, learn to deliver naturally, right? You don't have to be a salesperson. I think one of the big misconceptions I had, and I see this in other people, is that selling is dirty or like selling is gross, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
95% of people that sell that we have a impression of, whether it's buying a car or whatever, don't leave the best impression on it. And that's what we think of as sales.
Yeah.
When the reality is it's just being able to provide real value to people. Am I actually solving a problem? And then if the answer is yes, I can solve a real problem. Selling is just, can I find the people that have that problem? And the rest of it is just working out the details, right? Working out a price or working out, some sort of, small negotiation around the value that you provide.
Mhm.
And I had to learn that from scratch, right?
Mhm.
There's probably salespeople out there that will watch this and go, "Oh yeah, that's like sales 101." But to me, it wasn't, right? To me, it was like brand new information, and I had to learn how to do it.
Mhm.
And so that in itself, just conceptually, was something I had to learn. But then, I had to go out and I had to do the bad pitches, right? That's like nobody wants to talk about the pitch that you're like, oh, that was awful. Like
Yeah.
I just delivered, you know, tried to sell. I sounded salesy. It was bad. I just spammed that person with, this, and I shouldn't have done that. So I'm just you have to learn, and I think a lot of it's just getting on the bike and falling off and getting back on, and
Yeah, that's a great story because it really does take resilience and stick-to-itiveness and the willingness to, you know, give yourself some grace, right?
oh,
Because
totally.
you're gonna make mistakes and you just gotta be willing to do that over and over again until you get better.
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
good repetition. Yeah, for sure.
Now, now it sounds like you did, so that was like a little bit about the sales journey, and I'm
Yeah.
sure we could go a lot more into that, but like, you're leading a company now.
Yeah. Right.
So, have you kind of developed a leadership philosophy on how to lead your team?
Yeah. So our
Yeah.
team is small. So the first actually person that I brought over was head of sales, right?
Mhm.
Because I had hit my capacity with where I needed to be exerting that effort and brought in an enterprise security sales expert, right? As a
Mm.
co-founder, not just an
Ah,
employee,
nice,
co-founder.
nice,
And
nice.
so that differentiates us quite a bit when it comes to how we position ourselves. And then from there, I knew enough and learned enough on the sales side to bring him in as a co-founder. And that has been extremely beneficial. our philosophy when it comes to building our company um, is that we have a few tenets, and I won't go through every tenet that we have for our company, right? Or you know, philosophical pillar.
Yeah.
One of them is that as we build this out, we want to be people first. And that includes our employees as well as our customers. And so there are times, right, where we may have to say no to, certain customers, if that were to arise. Hopefully that never happens. But we want to be able to value our employees, those that we do have. We are trying to build a small company. I think now with AI and with a lot of the advantages that we can bring to the table, we can keep our teams small. So when it comes to growing our company, we're viewing it as we can see ourselves reaching X amount of revenue with not that many people,
Mm.
right? And that's different than it was in the past. And so we're going to, um, do our best to keep that vision clear, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's cool, right? Obviously, the larger number of employees that you have, it creates leadership challenges for sure. And then
100%.
with AI, you have an opportunity to have an AI enabled company, which should theoretically increase the output for each individual employee, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
it will also create some leadership challenges,
Absolutely.
as well. And tell me,
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, tell me what some of those leadership challenges that you've had to deal with as you've, grown the company.
Yeah. I think well, as far as leading people, right?
Hmm.
My business partner and I have been very much aligned. The challenges come through how do we want to position other people, right? I'll say like development or
Hmm.
augmented sales.
Hmm.
So the challenges have been hire versus contract, kind of like we were talking about. And
Hmm.
that's less of a maybe a leadership challenge in that space than it is just a business decision problem,
Yes, yes.
right? Because it's not at that point, you know, it's not really a personnel issue. We're not dealing with some sort of negative problem there. Um,
Yeah, basically, if you think you have the pipeline to sustain more full-time employees, maybe you hire, right? But
oh,
but
absolutely.
but if your pipeline is starting to erode or get a little bit weak at times, you may need to go to the contract approach, which of course tends to reduce your margins. But
Yes.
but it also prevents the kind of whipsawing the company from
Yeah.
high levels of employees to low levels of employees based on
Oh,
a contract.
totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
From a leadership perspective, let's answer your question more directly in that since we're still small, right? I don't have a
Yeah.
team I'm managing.
Yeah.
One thing I think we did that I really is valuable is we did this exercise. It was a series of questions that an advisor had sort of given us. They were all the hard questions to do with your business co-founder, right? If you're going to start a company with somebody, you need to have these sorted out at the beginning because they're the kinds of questions that will wreck a company if they're not talked about early. Which party can quit if they want to? Can they quit? If they quit, whose equity goes to whom? Do they retain their equity? What are your goals in life? What are your non-negotiables? Family time or things like this, right? Real personal. What's your vision for an exit? Do you want to exit? Do you want to IPO? Right? Um, Questions that are hard that will lead to friction down the road. We had those up front. And is there anything in your past, right? Almost like a personal background check of the other person, right? And it sounds awkward to say, and it's kind of awkward to do, to sit down with some person you think you know pretty well and go through this list of questions. But I would recommend it to anyone starting a company.
Wow.
And I've heard lots of stories from founders that failed, where a lot of those items were the reason for the failure, right? Where there's some
Yes.
sort of misalignment here and it didn't get addressed soon enough, or there's some personal issue that could have been talked about way earlier, right? And it would have been solved, and the company would have stayed together. Um, and so that's one thing. I don't know that is a bad experience, but I would say that's a huge lesson learned on mine.
Yeah, that makes, I mean, you've said that you and your co-founder have been very much aligned on how to move forward with the company. And it sounds
Yeah,
like by guys going through that process together, that helped create that alignment.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tyler, I'm curious. I want to ask, you kind of mentioned that running a small team, AI is being very beneficial for that to kind of help
Yeah.
give you some marketing insights, some sales before you brought on the
Hmm.
salesperson on. So when did you kind of notice that shift, seeing AI come up and saying, hey, maybe I could use this to help me in my entrepreneurial journey versus, just going to
Oh, yeah.
books or YouTube or whatnot? When did you notice that shift and start to lean more on AI?
Well, I knew it was coming over the last year and a half, right? But as far as direct application, the last 6 months has just seen a polar shift. So I'll give you an example, a direct example. We were going down the fundraising path for those who may care how that works. You go to investors, you pitch not just your idea because it's not 2021 anymore. You don't pitch an idea. You have to have a product and you have to have some sort of traction, right? And you're getting funding. And part of that is what are you going to do with the funds, right? And part of that was some early build out on the platform. Um, like, hey, we need these features in place before we're enterprise ready on the product. So a lot of it was development work, was where that funding was going to be going at the beginning. Um, and since then, right, since some of the advent of the AI coding tools, I was playing around with them and just said to my business partner, I was like, I think we can get months 0 through 6 done using AI. I don't think we need the funding for that first year, first 6 to 8 months of that roadmap year that we're presenting to investors. So let's give it a whirl. Let's see if I can and I chose to rebuild the entire platform, and I gave myself a 6 week deadline. Right, we're going to rebuild the whole thing in 6 weeks, and we did. So we were able to use AI. So we're using some of the AI code gen tools, and restructure the entire thing, rewrite all of it from scratch, 100,000 plus lines of code from scratch, using a mix of tools, right? Windsurf and some of the Claude code stuff, and of course, pointing it at our old code so it could learn from it. But that was the first big, like, wow, this is going to change the way that we function. Um, I think there is a ton of opportunity that we're exploring on the go-to-market side, really diving deep with customer research and customer analytics um, has been also very huge, right? Really helped us understand some niches in our space um, in the security world, right? Like, how would these customers buy this, and what regulatory motivators might there be, right, in certain areas of our product? And that has been also like the second biggest way we've applied AI.
Excellent. Another question I have for you is, of course, all three of us are entrepreneurial people on the call here. How do
Yeah.
you manage burnout? How do you keep yourself going? Because it is a headache wearing a lot of different hats. So, are there any type of block techniques or something to make sure that you're still focused and accomplishing your goals without burnout?
Well, yes, 100%. So the two things I always say is prayer and lifting. I pray and I lift, and these are daily disciplines. No, I would, and they're not work related, right? These are things that are extra outside of work. But that is what helps. So I have a family. I have 3 kids, right? And it's busy. My day is full from 5 a.m. through the end of the day. I think from a more practical, like, hey, let's talk about work related items that we could do that would help. Um, I think focus work is a big deal. I think people that say they can multitask really can't multitask. And I think some people are better at it than others, right? But I truly believe that, especially in the tech work, but even non-tech work, I think we need blocks of time where we're just focused on one thing at a time, and I can execute that thing extremely well. I'm a rigid planner, right? I will have blocks, every block of the day roughly aligned. I try to leave some room for things go wrong, right? My schedule is thrown off all the time. But I think planning that time management is just, I mean, it's crucial for burnout management. And then having the health, right? I talked about the lifting, but it can be anything really. But I really believe that the physical being physically well. Well, it's you can't replace that with anything else, right? There's not a caffeine drink or anything like that that's going to get you through a day. So that's crucial in my book. And then sleep, actually making time for sleep and actually making time for your family. So you don't feel so guilty about working, right? Because I work a lot, but if you can go, hey, you know what? This is time with my family. This is time with my kids, um, and have that dedicated time. I think that helps burnout because I think a lot of I've never really personally experienced a lot of burnout. It might be just my personality. I like to go, but when people I know who have burned out, a lot of that can be more of a mental thing, more than a physical or, the physical impacts the mental. But I think it's more of that maybe they feel guilty and they're trying to overcompensate in other areas. So I just try to remain balanced. Like I said, prayer lifting, time with family, and then line up the rest in a calendar. It's non-sophisticated 2 cents.
Right. It definitely helps when you're passionate about something. You can see the end goal. It helps to keep pushing through and get through those mental breaks for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I'll add one more thing. You have to write your wins down. You don't have to write them down. You have to celebrate when you win. If you go long stints of time, now I think the really successful people in life are the ones that can defer gratification for a long, long time. And the longer you can defer that gratification, the better and more successful you'll be, right? Because people quit. People burn out or they quit for whatever reason. So deferred gratification is certainly something, but you do need to celebrate like, hey, we got that sale today. Or hey, like I got that thing to work. I got that code to execute. Or, we solved that customer's problem. Like we actually did it and they said this about it. If you don't stop and recognize that once in a while, I do think that can lead to fatigue or burnout.
I agree. I did want to take a step back real quick. I know you mentioned earlier that you used to go to InfoSec conferences with your buddies when you were kind of just getting into the whole tech atmosphere and then
Yeah.
going from that to speaking at DEF CON. Tell us about that experience. Was that kind of surreal to go and listen to these speakers to then becoming a speaker at these conferences?
Yeah, oh man, totally. That's a good story. So, man, I was going to these hacker meetups. There's a group here called 2600. They meet all around the country, but there was a 2600 meetup in Nashville. They may still exist. Um, and then I'd been going to those groups, right? And I'm trying to remember if the DEF CON group existed at that time. But I've been going to those, going to local conferences too. There was a great one, a hacker conference in Louisville called DerbyCon. It's not around anymore. It was awesome. We had some local conferences too that were once a year. Freaknik down in Murfreesboro, and would go these things, right? It was more just to learn and like, hey, let's hack. They'd have capture the flag contests, right? Where you'd be hacking machines trying to win points. And at this point I was pure tech, right? Like all tech, no, I had no vision for starting a company or anything like that. Um, but I had kind of set two mental goals. I was like, career goals for me at the time uh, were to speak at DEF CON and to hack a satellite, which sounds really stupid, but at the time I was like, that would be cool. Um, and so when the DEF CON thing came around, right, I had submitted a request for paper, I think, to one other conference. It got rejected. This was years before. But I had already discovered and had been just out of my own curiosity, discovered something called what ended up being called poison pipeline execution. It was an attack style on CI/CD systems, and uh, I had a blast doing it. It was a new attack technique for attacking systems that build software, but I didn't realize the impact of it. I didn't even realize the impact of it when I submitted the talk to DEF CON. And they have a very lengthy process for that. First I don't hear a rejection letter. I'm like, okay, well, they must be deferring the rejection letters. But then I heard hey, you're not out yet. We have a final round. You made it to the final round of papers, and we'll let you know. And at this point, I'm going, man, there's no way. This would have been the first conference I ever spoke at, right? There's 3,300 people in the arena or whatever at the conference. And so, like, to me, it was my first speaking engagement. And so I didn't think I was going to make it. And then I get the letter. It's like, hey, congratulations, your talk's been accepted, and you'll be given more information. It was awesome. When I went to speak, the experience was just the normal. I spoke as a speaking engagement, right? Large crowd, but I got my talk done. I had released a tool. called Cider. Released a tool called Cider. It was the continuous integration and deployment exploiter. That's what the words, that was the acronym. But I released this code and I talked about it at the conference, released this new attack style. And then I didn't expect necessarily what would happen afterwards. I didn't realize that the visibility that would get me. There was a company in Israel after that. If you're not aware, like there was a ton of security products coming out of Israel. But Tel Aviv specifically has a Silicon Valley-like startup scene that's just pumping out multi-billion-dollar security startups. And one of these was they were called Cider. And so I started lawyering up because I thought they were
Uh-oh.
gonna steal
Uh-oh.
my IP, right? But they weren't. They're awesome guys. And they had a startup and they asked me to advise on it. It was a software that wrote defensive systems for the textile that I was a part of, right? That I helped invent. They're building the defensive component to the textile I developed, and that was a blast, and that changed my total worldview. But all that came out of DEF CON. They ended up getting acquired by Palo Alto Networks back in 22 or 23. It was a very short but awesome ride to be a part of that startup. But all that came out of that DEF CON experience. Had no idea, right? Had no idea that it would all lead to that. But it was very, very cool. Very cool. And from there, I've spoken at other conferences. I speak at conferences pretty regularly now. None of them that big though, right? Maybe I'll go back someday. But
And it seems like you're basically doing conferences as a way to augment your marketing efforts as well, right? Kind of.
oh, totally.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you didn't like, and you weren't really trying to, you were just trying to speak at a conference, right?
That's exactly it.
And provide value, right? And have,
Oh yeah.
have an interesting discussion with other professionals. And then what it did is it basically enabled you to, create people that were really interested in your solution.
Well, yeah, 100%. I was probably one of the few naive people there. When I got there, I realized, oh, everyone is like plugging something.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
sure.
or, or they're like
Yeah.
maybe not branding it. Like a lot of people are there, especially at DEF CON, for just the hack or just the research that they've done.
Hmm.
But a lot were like, okay, I'm representing this company's research, IBM's research team or whatever.
Hmm.
And I'm going, man, I had my entrepreneurial hat on properly then, I would have positioned it differently probably.
Yeah, sure.
But no, it was great. It worked out. So
Very good. Very good. So we touched on this, but we didn't go deep on it earlier in our conversation. But you were talking about, well, how you're going to create an AI-enabled company, and
yeah.
you talked about using AI to
Hmm.
um, basically rewrite your code base for your
Oh yeah.
application. So
Yes.
so that's how, one way that you're using it. Talk about in general
Mm.
about your, you know, artificial intelligence, vision for your company.
Yes. That's there's a lot there. So I'll unpack it. I'll unpack it. There's the ability to use it to enable any company, right? Whether you're selling paper or you're building cybersecurity tools, like we were talking about, there's the AI enabled business, and then there's the direct application of AI in the cybersecurity space in the product to solve the problems that we're trying to solve. So I'll draw those two distinctions. I think more immediately, it's the enable our business to do things faster, whether it's AI assistance instead of a personal assistant, right? So small things operationally, to bigger things, helping with market research and like we talked about. When it comes to the problem, the other side, when it comes to solving the problem in the tech space, because Untamed Theory, what we're doing is we are not just equipping companies to find security vulnerabilities in the code that they write. we're also equipping them to prioritize them based off their business context and fix them very quickly. And there's some reasons why we're doing that problem, but that's a huge and very expensive problem for lots of companies. And there is a ton of opportunity there to leverage AI in that process. One of the general areas that AI can break down, I think it's what leads to the most fear in people when it comes to AI or taking jobs and ruining lives and things like that, is it does break down knowledge barriers, right? Where you, at a company that has maybe an engineering team, a security team, a business management team, or something, you're going to have expertise. That's what, that's what people build their careers around, is expertise in a knowledge base. And you're having those walls knocked down. So if you've spent a lot of time accruing and memorizing and becoming an expert in certain in information, maybe not the application of that information, but the information itself, um, those lines are getting really, really blurred. And so that's an opportunity in some cases, right? So we could have, developers going, hey, you know what? I can tap into security expertise now, or the other way around. Security engineers going, hey, you know what? Now I understand how the code works. Um, that's great, and that's what we're trying to solve with our problem, or with our product. And and so I'll give you an example. Companies just have piles and piles of vulnerabilities to fix. And a lot of times with those piles of vulnerabilities, there's a pretty predictable pattern for how they're going to solve those. They're going to get this big list of things from the scanner, and they're going to go, oh, this says critical, critical, high, high, medium. And then they'll pass it to the team that's fixing them, the security team, let's say, passes it to the team that's fixing them. And the first thing is this really a risk? Is this really exploitable? And then the security team goes, well, we're not sure, that's for you to figure out, right? And then an enormous amount of people power has just been spent arguing about the criticality of some scanner output, and all this other information needs to be gathered, right? Business context. Is this applicable to my business? Is it publicly facing? Could it be exploited? Is something like this even being exploited in the wild? And these are all knowledge problems, right? These are all just extra context and extra knowledge that we don't have that we need to go gather. And that's a perfect place for an LLM to come in and help solve that, right? Because we can augment that knowledge base with other things, business context, environmental context, and combine it with that vulnerability context. So that's the route we're going down for implementing AI in the product. And we're excited about it. Like, we think it's a very, very exciting thing. And there's a ton of debate, right? Like, I don't need to tell you, there's a ton of debate in, all sorts of things, ethics or fear of jobs being lost and things like that around it. But that's our approach right now to leveraging it in the product as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like then, you've also embraced AI to actually build out your code base in an accelerated fashion. So
Oh yeah,
instead of you basically contracting out or hiring new developers, you're able to basically increase the output of yourself and your team to write more lines of code, right?
yeah,
And it's,
totally.
there's a little bit of risk there,
Oh,
as
100%.
well, right? Because you don't know exactly.
Ton of risk.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
talk about that whole trade-off that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The trade-off is I have to read through a bunch of lines of code because a personal a personal standard I've set is that every line of code generated needs to be reviewed by a person. So it is generating a lot of code. I then review that code. And that's going to be problematic for companies because I can guarantee you that they're going to want to move as fast as the code can get generated. And that will mean a lack of, in the future, for companies doing it like I'm doing it currently, a lack of review. And that for our product is fantastic, right? Because we're
Yeah.
about to have a whole lot of insecure code written in the world. And that's the problem, right? The amount of insecure code is about to go up tenfold, right? And that is great for our product. So as I'm developing this, though, I'm having to be extremely mindful of what I'm feeding for prompts. I've actually come up with a little side project we've released for free that's helping coders secure the prompts that they generate. But it's going to be a problem. And for us, it just means more manual code review, which does mean it slows it down a little bit, right? Especially as it grows. As this thing gets bigger and bigger, it's a lot more review to do. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword for sure. And that comes from me having understood code and the code that I'm writing because I used it to rewrite code that I had already written by hand, right? Um, most people are not going to be doing that. Most people are going to be generating new code from scratch with these tools, and that brings a whole new set of problems with it, right? Especially on,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, in my brief experience in fooling around with this stuff,
yeah,
right, is yeah, review the code, and then I have other AIs review the code,
yes,
right, right, as a second and third check, and then I wonder, like, what am I really doing here?
yeah,
Right? It's like I'm basically having different algorithms
I mean,
review my
yeah,
thing, right? Whatever thing that I'm doing.
yeah,
And it definitely creates insight because each one of the tools has a different point of view, right? And then
yeah.
some of them they overlap and stuff. It's crazy.
It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. It's not only is the tech when you first see it, there's that wow factor of wow, it's generating code that's executing and it works. Um, but then the more you do it, the more you go through that, you start to understand like some of the ways that it's going to be problematic. Like, the Gordian knot analogy, like you hear the term like spaghetti code, right? It's just like you'll hear developers talk about that, like, oh, they just wrote a bunch of spaghetti code. It's not the best practice, the best form, the most elegant looking. It's just, it gets the job done and it's really messy to look at. And it's really hard to reverse engineer. So that developer leaves and someone new comes in, they're going to be untying a massive knot. It's like this spaghetti code generator on steroids, right? It's has the potential to really overcomplicate things. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing like a niche of developer in the future, and their job is to go in and unspaghetti some AI code, right? Because it got into such a state that it can't. Their product is dependent on it, and it's too overcomplicated. Um, so that's a niche for some developer out there somewhere to write AI to go undo the AI code, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, wow. That's crazy. That is really fascinating.
yeah, no, I think we've seen a lot of the benefits from it, and I think some of the repercussions are just coming down the road. We'll see though.
Well, hey, let's go ahead and dig into that. We'd like to give the guests a chance to do a couple of bold predictions. Is there anything with your
Yeah.
experience utilizing AI? Probably keep it 3 to 5 years. What do you see, as a bold prediction for AI in 3 to 5 years, positive or negative?
Yeah, I've had and this is going to sound cynical. Before the LLM revolution, maybe starting 3 to 4 years ago, I had said to some teammates, I was like, developers are going away, and I don't think they're going away. In fact, I know they're not going away. What I really mean though is that function is going to look very, very different. I think so. Prediction one is a guy sitting there hacking out code at a IDE in a terminal. I think that's going away. I think the better these tools get, and they'll get refined, right? So that they can maybe aren't they're a crazy weapon like we talked about for those who aren't experts in the code, but for those who are, they're going to be extremely powerful, but they're going to be different. So I think when I say developers are going away, I think the way development is done now is going away, and I think that will happen sooner than later. I think like if we're talking 3 to 5 year timeline, I think we're talking 1 to 2 years before every company is equipping their developers with these tools and they're just writing code differently. I think I'll pair that with a second prediction that I sort of came up with, which is we are in the era of, I'll call it clear communicators, right? So if you're going to have agentic systems running something and those operating it, like the developer, is going to look more like a PM, right? Like a product manager, or they're going to look more like yeah, like a manager in general, not just a product manager, but a manager. And so if it's all prompt based, the clearest, most succinct, well-written prompt for these systems is what's going to make or break the success of ongoing use of those tools, right? And therefore, I think we're going to see a lot of folks that maybe they had great coding skills, great math and logic skills, but they weren't the best communicators, right? Or they maybe are not organized in their thinking and their ability to communicate or orate an idea to somebody. I think that's actually going to be prohibitive to success with some of the newer tools because it's almost a different way of thinking, right? And in approaching a problem. You're still solving the same problem, but the way that you solve that problem is going to be different. So my bold prediction too is we're going to see a lot of people that maybe didn't have the tech skill before, but we're good at organizing thoughts and ideas. All of a sudden, their world's going to be opened to producing and making things that they weren't otherwise able to do because they didn't have this technical, mathy sort of background. So that's prediction number two. I don't know how you measure that over a 3 to 5 year time horizon, but I
Right.
think era of clear communicators is what I would say. Um, and then the last, I came up with a few. The last one I came up with was user interface, right? And this is not, they're working on this now, but the concept you've heard of like just-in-time access, where you get the access you need, you request it in Okta or whatever, and they give you it for a day and you can use the
Yeah.
access. That concept transferred to the UI, the user experience. So right now, when you log into Facebook, you have a bar on the side, you have the same predictable chat windows and your little icons here, and the UI is fixed. It's laid out for you. The idea that that user interface will be completely dynamic, right? So just-in-time user interface is, I think, 1 to 3 years too. I mean, I think it's close to the point where an application will then give you only what you need and what you typically would want to see, similar to how like a YouTube feed
Yeah.
will give you what it knows it thinks you're interested in. I think we'll see user interface shift to the same type of thing, where it's now
Mm.
formatting itself based on your previous behavior. Um, and it'll be much more minimal, right, in its appearance. We'll see if that plays out or not. It sounds like I'm glad I'm not trying to solve that problem. That's somebody else's problem to solve. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. I know I've heard recently some of the streaming services like Netflix and some others are trialing out certain AI backed software such as that, where they can just show you what's relevant to you instead of what's popular on Netflix. What's going to be
Oh,
more
yeah.
likely for you to watch. So I definitely see that coming. That'd be interesting to see how social media utilizes that for sure.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And social media, but also just anything, right? Your
Right.
your your security portal that you log into. Like maybe it only shows you the metrics it knows you care about. Um, or it dynamically generates them based on what you ask it. So, man, it'll be
Definitely.
interesting. Yeah,
Right.
interesting to see.
So what tools are you using daily? I know, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, there's a lot of the big ones.
Yeah,
What builders do you like to use? Are there any less known AI tools that maybe you'd recommend some of the listeners check out?
my daily for coding would be Windsurf.
Okay.
Windsurf, Windsurf. It is like Cursor, if you've heard of Cursor. It is it sits on top of Microsoft's Visual Studio Code, but it helps generate code and it will allow you to select the models that you wish to target. So if it's ChatGPT's model suite or if it's Claude's model or the Anthropic's model suite, you can just pick and choose what you need for that task. So maybe you write a plan with the O3 model, for ChatGPT, and then you use that plan and you implement it with Claude Sonnet. Um, it's a super powerful tool and they're moving really, really quick. That's the one I would have to have, right? Um, I think there's a bunch of really cool ones out there I've been playing around with. But some of them they don't let me get as granular as I want to. So like Bolt.new or Lovable or some of those that generate code apps, they're very cool. Um, they're definitely geared more towards like front end work. Um, there's a lot, if you want to do something complex on the back end, it's a little bit harder to navigate with those things. So I
Hmm.
don't really use them as much, but great for like website generating and things like that. And then Perplexity. So I know that's not like a model. That's just a tool and one of the older, first on the scene research tools, but Perplexity has been amazing for doing like really deep market analysis or really deep customer research. And it's super powerful. So those would be the ones that come to mind first.
Very good. Now, talk to me a little bit about how you manage your time for
Mm,
skill development,
yeah,
right? Because,
yeah, it's hard.
you basically just listed 5 tools or so, more, maybe more, right? And kind of bracketing your time between, hey, building the business, serving, customers, and then,
Yeah,
well, your professional development. How do you kind of bracket that?
yeah, no, man, that's a. I'll let you know when figure it out. The way I've been doing it is started off basically at the beginning of the year. I said I got to get disciplined about right how I learn. Um, that's actually something I would say to anyone wanting to get into InfoSec is less about the skill set. Do you like to learn? But beyond just like do you like to, man, if you open up LinkedIn or you open up X or anything else and try and go read, it's just like endless trash. And maybe it's good stuff, but it's analysis paralysis. You can't, it's so hard to figure out like what is important, what's noise when it comes to just people, because people are trying to post articles and post for their own publicity, which is fine, especially if they're valuable. But the things I've had to do is limit and go, okay. So for example, I don't have this currently, but for the first 3 to 4 months of the year, I said I'm going to do block it out and say I'm going to do at least one AI video per day. I'm going to watch something new, right? Some deep dive into either how it works. And this was AI specific because I knew I needed to understand the inner functionings of it and read one article. So one article and one video a day. And I just had a catalog of videos to watch and in checklist format that I would bookmark and keep. And that sounds like why do you need to write that down? Because I wouldn't do it. I'd have the tab open and I'd never get to the videos. There's no specific series. There's like a post about this, the Anthropic CEO explaining this, or this security guy was able to figure out this with an LLM, or maybe it's the new OWASP LLM white paper that came out. But I need to read an article a day and I need to watch a video a day to keep up. Now, what I do is I have a few newsletters that I actually find a lot of value in, like they're really, really good. There's a lot of newsletters out there. There's a handful of them that I'll get. They're either once a week or some of them are once a day, but and it's enough that I can go, okay, what came out today? Because this tech is evolving so quick that I don't expect to learn it. I just want to know if it's relevant to my tasks or not. And if it is, I'll dive and explore more. But other than that, you got to be extremely selective with what you give your time to, because you can't read all, can't learn it all. Um, but that's been it. And then ironically, you can use AI to learn about AI. So
Yeah.
don't win that cliff. It won't come back on itself. And we're learning completely contrived info, but so
Right.
far it seems to be all right.
Right. So, looking back at your career journey, what would you do differently if you could start over again with the
Oh
knowledge that you
man,
have today?
that's not a question I anticipated. Maybe I should. Maybe it was, but what would I do different? I think, I'm really grateful for the journey I've had so far. There's a lot of opportunities that came my way that I didn't necessarily seek out. So I'll maybe start by saying that I really have enjoyed what I've done so far. I think I would have pursued the entrepreneur journey much earlier. I think if I were to go back and do it again, I would have, I didn't, it was all misconception about what it is, right? And I remember at one point I was walking with a buddy of mine, a mentor and boss at the time, and I went, man, you know what I'll never do? I'll never start a software company. That sounds awful, right? And then what am I doing now? Starting a software company. And I think it just had to do with misconception of what it is. And I love the convergence of like new ideas, solving people's real problems, actually applying my skill set to something that and building something out, working with people to do that, working with people that are way better at other things that I'm not at, right? That's really cool. We get a person who's a sales expert. We get somebody who actually is a developer. I'm a hacker, right? I'm a hacker who writes code, but to work with developers, that they're like that's their thing. Man, I would have done that. I would have done that way sooner.
Mhm.
And so I wouldn't have undone anything that I did because I'm very grateful for all of it. But I would have started this thing a lot sooner.
Nice.
One other question I wanted to ask Tyler, you mentioned you are watching or aim to watch an AI video and read an AI article
Yeah.
daily. Being a parent, is that something that you are trying to drill into your kids? I know we both have kids the same age, go to the same schools. So is that something
Yeah.
that you kind of see what's on the horizon? You're trying to get them interested and get their hands on AI so they have that foot up in the door as they grow.
Yeah, so I don't drill it into them necessarily. My son is 12 and he uses ChatGPT for all sorts of stuff. Like for example, he's building a computer out right now. He's trying to spec out a computer to build so he can do things.
Awesome.
And he's using ChatGPT to help him like, oh, what would be the recommended, I have a budget, I have a medium budget. Oh, I have a low budget. Help me understand what parts I could buy to accomplish my goals. So, and I'm not really even having to teach him that. I think it's organically through his friends and I talk about it quite a bit at home. Um, Being in security, I'm also extremely protective of my kids. And, we didn't go too much into a lot of the old work I was doing back in the day, but there's been a lot of stuff I've seen. And I think a lot of technologists probably have the same perspective of not everything is it's a mean world out there, right? And so I've been maybe not overprotective of them in that, but certainly have drilled into them like, hey, there's hackers out there, there's bad guys, there's people trying to steal our stuff, and so they may probably have a a higher dose of that paranoia than most kids their age. So when it comes to the AI piece, I think just equipping them to always be asking, don't just drift, don't just go with the flow and do what everyone else is doing, but have a goal. And is this a tool that could help you accomplish that goal? And that's the way I've been approaching it. And the way I approach it. I don't know how much more there is to elaborate on that. We don't sit around, talking to AI that much, or and my other kids are younger than that. But it's been, I think their eyes are opened. To them, it will likely be like the early internet was to us. Like, I don't know that it's as mind-blowing to them, right? Because there's been Alexa their whole life, or there's been
Smartphones, yeah.
smartphones, and they never had to type in a DOS prompt before. And so it's just not this mind-blowing as mind-blowing as to us to go, wow, just to understand what it's actually capable of doing. Yeah, I think it's gonna be more normal to them.
So what's next for you?
What's next? Oh man, we're scaling. We're scaling to the moon. That's no, it's an exciting journey. Like we are really, really stoked about Untamed Theory and where we're taking the product. Um, and not just the product, but all these customers who were early customers that we brought on, working with them to really understand, hey, can we solve this problem for real for you? And we are, right? And so the problem of prioritization and remediation when it comes to products that are being built, especially that prioritization piece. We are really excited about where things are going. We decided to remain bootstrapped for now. Given a lot of that AI tooling, we don't need the funding to kind of take those next steps. And that's what we're doing right now. And so we brought on we're open to anyone, right? Anyone who wants to hear about the problems that we're solving, but we've been very selective with some of those early customers. Um, so seeing them as strategic partners, right, as part of our growth strategy. And that's been really, really fun to develop. And we're really excited about where we're going from there. But we are going to continue to build this thing out. We are changing. We believe we're fundamentally changing the way that application security will be approached. It's not necessarily some of our customers could see it as a checkbox for other solutions out there in our space. and part of the product might be able to compete in that with those checkbox requirements. But we are fundamentally trying to change how vulnerabilities get managed. And so we are fully driven, and really excited about where things are going on that regard, on that front. So that's where we're going. I don't have any more to elaborate there.
Cool.
Yeah, it's exciting times ahead. It's a great time to be starting a company.
It is.
Definitely.
It is. Yeah.
You two can relate on that end, I think. And I know you're not necessarily starting one, but have one. And so, yeah, it's just an exciting time.
It is. Tyler, is there anything that we haven't covered today that maybe you would like to touch on, or any last thoughts you would like to leave the audience with?
No, I don't have any necessarily imparting thoughts that we haven't already covered. Cybersecurity is changing quick. The attackers they're not changing. Their objectives are always the same, right? Depends on the threat actor. But I would just say, so the tooling might evolve to help shift it, but the adversary is going to be the adversary, and always is looking to exploit, whether it's a company or a person or whatever. And so, we're excited about sort of the opportunity to solve some big problems, not just at Untamed Theory, which is what we're doing, but just in the industry as a whole, right? I think CISOs and CEOs right now are seeing what's happening in the world technologically. And you could say it's more than AI, but it's not. Every CEO is gung-ho behind this AI wave, and because they understand the impact that it's going to have, and that it is having already. But we see it as an exciting thing. I think we have the opportunity to solve some really big security problems in a completely new way, and that is super, super cool.
All right. Well, Tyler, thanks for coming on today. It was really,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really fantastic discussion. Appreciate your insights across all the different topics that we hit on.
Oh yeah, bet.
We covered a lot of from everything from the kids to AI to audio mixing.
Oh man, yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't tell any of those stories. Another time maybe. Yeah.
Definitely. We'll be sure to link your LinkedIn in the bio, as well as Untamed Theory. Is there anywhere else you're active that our audience can find you if they want?
No, LinkedIn is going to be the best place. I do have an X account, but I'm not as active on that.
Perfect. We'll make sure those are linked up for you. And again, appreciate you jumping on with us today.
Appreciate you both.